Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here of talking about loans and any sorts of investments, right? So a lot of times it sure seems that way that when we do talk about borrowing money and of course how to manage money, and a lot of times you'll want to know too is that a lot of times it seems like it all begins with numbers, right? So it's like not really about the fact about okay, yeah, that you want to go ahead and start out with maybe a spot to where you want to put certain things or something like that, such as money investments, and maybe giving certain locations certain labels and certain names or anything like that. But a lot of times you want to know too that in case if anybody were to ask you that whenever it comes to loans though, and when we do speak about loans, that it's another way of how you want to call is a favor, right? Or anything what you call is toward yeah, well really that how often are we going to necessarily think about that to where that whenever it comes to whenever you do take out a loan, and if it's going to be maybe a personal loan, or if it's going to be maybe maybe mortgage payment or something like that, anything to do with the finances, right? And you're always thinking to where okay, yeah, that whenever you do apply for a loan, or if you're trying to save up your money at certain times, certain ways, that you're always want to know too is toward yeah, does that really require a lot of math, or for any reason at all that yeah, just show me how it works. And a lot of times it's like like everybody else might even say is that whenever you do speak about loans, a lot of times it's like yeah, maybe not everybody is really going to know how it works. So that's why it sure seems that way, that yeah, well really that how often are we really going to hear that story to where that whenever it comes to certain loans, that somebody's going to maybe say is that this is how we met right here, is that you go ahead and if you were to go ahead and take out like yeah, anything such as maybe a loan right here, and let's just say that if you were to say something like 450 each or something like that. So if we were to actually do the math like that, and at 102 that 45,876 89 plus 100,000 and plus 450 each, and so a lot of times you 102, what exactly does that necessarily mean when we do say 450 each, and maybe at the subtotal would be something like the loan amount right here. And like, so let's just say that if I were to say, yeah, the subtotal right here, the subtotal right here. So at the time you always want to know too that, why is it that you're told that at least 4 or 5 different price tags right here. And so let's just say that, 450 right there. So let's just say on average that the subtotal would be up to the 2,000 450 458 74. So if we were to say something like that, and you're warranted toward it, are you really just doing configuring the math whenever you do that, or for any reason at all that that's supposed to be anything such as lucky guess or something like that? But I'll have to tell you one thing, everybody. Whenever you're brainstorming ideas about working the math, though, it sure seems that way. That yeah, that really, whenever you take a guess for a word problem, and whenever you actually try to solve that word problem, and then maybe somebody sees what you're doing, then chances are that yeah, that you 102 is toward it, that whenever you're trying to work out a payment plan, a payment arrangement, a lot of times you're always 102 is that yeah, that do you really, can you really put your own word and meaning whenever it comes to loans and any sorts of investments, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about that, speak about loans, that it sure seems that way toward it. You might even heard about that toward it, don't borrow any more than what you need and all that, but it sure seems that way that most of the time it's like yeah, let me show you how this works right here. Is this toward it for how much, that if you need to borrow, and then how much are you willing to agree to be able to pay each month, and also, so it's like, so yeah, so each time we do the math right here, and what I know is that whenever you first start doing this, you may have had a goal. Like, oh yeah, you may have set a goal toward it. This is how much that you want to save, and maybe this is how much that you're willing to come, like, yeah, including yeah, interest and all that. But a lot of times it seems like yeah, based on our experience whenever it comes to handling the finances, right? So it sure seems that way that really, why would you want to take out any source of loan to begin with? But like everybody else might say that, well, really, that a lot of people would take out a loan just to see what it's like or something like that. But how often are we really going to hear something like, this is how we met right there? That whenever you do take out a loan, that's how you meet somebody, right? And so it's like a lot of times you're always want to know too that yeah, that during the time whenever you did take out a loan, that this is what you were working with right here, that you were working with trying to yeah, that trying to yeah, set an account, and then also looking over everything, making sure everything is all correct and everything, and knowing about how much money that you have to work with, and maybe how much money that you're trying to save up and all that. But a lot of times you're always want to know too is that really that each time we do speak about loans, a lot of times it seems like a lot of times you're probably thinking is toward yeah, well, really that a number of things are going through my mind a lot of times whenever I do look at the loans and everything, and like everybody else might say, is toward getting the job done and everything. But whenever it comes to understanding about most loans, though, that you want to look at them as to where, yeah, they're nothing but just a bunch of, troublemaker and, type. I'm like, oh, yeah, whenever it comes to understanding about that loans, though, that almost all the time that you're always probably thinking is toward, yeah, well, really, whenever you think about loans a lot of times, that you're always thinking is toward it. I have never really been able to do the math exactly, just like what I see right here. But like everybody else might say, is that if you would actually do the fractions right here, and at 102, that if you actually work the math right here, that that how much. If we're talking about 45,876.89 right here, and talk about for a decimal fraction right here, but how many how many how many pizza slices do you think that would be equal to? And I would say that maybe that would be enough to maybe to feed at least 570 people or something like that. But it sure seems that way that every time we do the math, though, and a lot of times you want to know too, is that really that more or less. So every time we do speak about most bills a lot of times, and you always want to know too that more or less. So it's like, yeah, that every time it comes to where that whenever you're going to go ahead and be working out the payments and all that, so, and like everybody else might even say, is to where that you know how that is with most loans. Most loans that they'll tell you that yeah, well, you got to pay that back, and then of course that knowing about for how much that you are needing to borrow, and then maybe about yeah, especially interest, especially interest. And so that's maybe one of the reasons why everybody else might say that you don't really call that like everybody else would say, is toward it whenever it comes to loans and investments, that whenever you do think about them, that you probably say is toward I try not to think about not to borrow as much as I need to, mainly because of the fact that yeah, interest charge, and also that when we do speak about loans a lot of times, it's like, yeah, you know how that is that whenever you do wind up taking out a loan that you're talking about is that the bill is a lot more expensive than what you thought it was, and so it's like yeah that whenever you were doing your shopping, that the receipts and then maybe the ticket orders and everything said something so totally different than compared to what it said down here and maybe paragraph 5 or something like that. So it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about loans, though, that it seems like it's money. A lot of times it seems like that's really what's kind of that's really kind of floating through your mind a lot of times is about money. So it's like yeah, that whenever it comes to support and everything, but like everybody else would say is toward yeah. Well, whenever you do think about loans and investments, though, then why don't you think about meeting somebody in the community? Whenever you do take out a loan, that you do meet somebody, and a lot of times you always want to know too that really that. So it sure seems that way that every time you do speak about loans, a lot of times you're always thinking about money most of the time, right? You don't really think too much about who else that could be looking over your work and who else that finds it real interesting. And you might even think as toward a really, I really don't know really what is so interesting about that. But let's just say on average though that people might say is toward if you were to maybe yeah, like everybody else might say is toward it 40 4550 right here. So let's just say that for 4550 right here, and let's just say that if that right there was supposed to be something that you were working on, right, in 102, where that 4550, but that was that right. I'm like yeah, I don't know about maybe anything like what you call if you want to bet a certain amount or something like that, but like everybody else might say that whenever you do place a bet on something, that what does that usually mean whenever you bet on something? For usually it's for who's right and who's wrong. Yeah, that's usually the main purpose to why people bet is to where the who's right or wrong or something like that. And so almost every time we think about that though in 102, that whenever somebody places a bet on something, that's usually mean is toward it yeah that you go ahead and yeah that you pay in, or like yeah you pay that person just because if you're right or wrong about something. But like everybody else might say is that you know uh, have we thought about that about most loans though, that whenever it comes to business trades and maybe whenever it comes to even exchange, is that whenever it comes to understanding about yeah about money management, is to where that really what all have you learned while you were doing this, and like everybody else might say is to where that based on your experience, that what have you learned while you were working on this, and people might say is toward it, well, I learned maybe just a little bit about how complicated it is just because of the fact that that whenever you were first doing the math, that what you were actually thought of is that what you were thinking about was that the fact that whenever it comes to most loans, though, that you knew how much money you had to work with there at the beginning, but then still that the first thing that you were thinking about mainly was the fact that you were not even registered for the account yet, and also that some of the paperwork was missing. That the paperwork that was required on the application was missing, and then also that it was whenever you do apply for a loan or you pay in make a payment, it is a lot of times it's like yeah that's usually what you see too, is that stuff that's missing on an application, and maybe information about yeah for how much so yeah how much the loan amount is for, and then if there's any cash awards or balance awards, or any rewards points or something like that. But like everybody else might even say, is that whenever you do think about a loan, a lot of times, that it seems like it's all about borrowing, and then it's all about the fact about yeah, getting along with your neighbors, getting along with your friends. But so it sure seems that way a lot of times. Is that yeah, almost every time you do speak about loans, that's pretty much what it is, right? Is to where it's all about borrowing. It's about borrowing money, and it's also about yeah, borrowing, negotiating, and as well as getting even trade or so. But at the time, how many of us are really going to maybe say is toward it? Really, could you maybe be doing a favor for somebody? The way you think about that, though, is that I have right here that all this writing right here, but still, like whenever it comes to understanding about most loans, though, that how often are we really going to think about is toward it? A pay in favor. So it sure seems that way that every time we do speak about loans a lot of times, that are you really yeah, that when we do speak about favors a lot of times, it's like, yeah, that, anybody might even say that those favors, of course, are going to come, in a variety of ways, right? But, I'm talking about, the favor I'm talking about is actually based on the fact about that, yeah, that, somebody does not have access, or that yeah, that yeah, people might even say that yeah, well, I don't really know too much about this stuff, or yeah, I don't really have the right knowledge, or I don't have access to this at the moment. So a lot of times it seems like that people might even say is that based on your experience, though, it's like yeah, like everybody else might even say is that well, that's not really my problem. You go ahead and you go ahead and yeah, you go ahead and fill out the application, and if you run into a situation or so, and but still, that's your problem, not mine. So a lot of times, you're probably thinking like everybody else is that 102 that how are you supposed to fix things a lot of times, and in which I don't blame anyone, and you 102 that whenever it comes to taking care of problems, that you probably want to know too is that you go ahead and you say the words such as, if you want to include that, maybe like yeah, like anybody says toward it, yeah, not my problem. So let's just say that if you were to reply that, even on a text message or something like that, and people say that yeah, well, I don't know how to do this right here. You know, I don't know anything about how this works. And let's just say that if you were to reply something such as, "That ain't my problem," well, okay, well that's your problem, not mine. I'm trying to take care of this right here, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That every time we do think about that, though, and you're always 102, that you know. You were thinking is toward, okay, yeah, that most of the time it's like most problems, so how many problems are going to be resolved, maybe if you don't want to deal with maybe somebody else's problem a lot of times, or maybe that people may say is that, okay, yeah, well, that like, yeah, but still, if you're going to be working in customer service for sure, if you're going to be working in customer service for sure, that you would probably say that a lot of those problems, of course, that you want to go ahead and be more flexible and say that, okay, yeah, well, I can fix that, but still, but on the other hand, that when we do speak about loans a lot of times, that you probably think is toward that whenever you do speak about loans, that it's like it's all about borrowing money, but during the time that you didn't have it, but then also that you're thinking is toward yeah, well, really that how often are we really going to maybe think about that is like in maybe an even exchange or something like that, to where that you may not owe as much money back as you may thought that you did. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, you may have first started out with the fact about with the loan, though, that you were made, the original agreement would have been about you for 45,876, and so you have right here for 100,000 and plus with the 450 each. And so if you were to actually do the math right here, and you want to know too that what does that mean right there, and like everybody else might even say too that whenever we do speak about loans a lot of times, that whenever you do the math though, it seems like whenever you get a bill, it seems to be a lot more expensive. It's a lot more expensive than what you thought it was, and that's why it seems like that. Okay, yeah, that with the bill right here, that yeah, it's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more expensive. It was a lot. It's a lot more expensive than what you thought it was. So that's why it sure seems that way. That every time we do speak about bills, a lot of times, and you're 102. That a lot. Thanks for explaining to me. You're a lot more expensive. So it's like so every time we do speak about bills, most of the time, and you're 102. That all this other stuff that I was talking about from earlier, but with neighbors and everything. But in case if they were to ask me that, really that what's the best way of how to explain a loan, and you're probably thinking as toward really that if you want to look at that, if you want to maybe just a little bit, maybe you have a pay it forward, type of, but still that. But another way I can maybe look at it is toward it. For knowing about it, that whenever you do work out loan repayments, though, that you're probably thinking is toward, okay, yeah, well, really, that you really think about that to where that you can actually make a smaller payments and actually within certain time as to where you say is toward, okay, yeah, one so it's like so about the way most of the time with most payments though is that to where it's like month by for every 30 days or so, every 30 days, and so we all know that most lenders would say is toward it out of the 35 months, and so every time we think about that though, and want to know too that how long is it going to take you for you to be able to pay off this full amount right here? How long is it going to take for you to pay this off? And so that's why it sure seems that way that you pay it in full. And so you go through all this right here and think as to where paid in full. Everybody else might say that you go ahead and explain that on a note right there, but still that but it's like between paid and full. So if you were to actually look at all this writing right here and 102 that you're not gonna be you won't be coming up to this part point right here at least until maybe after after a few months have passed toward after you just made a payment recently. But like everybody else might say is that really that in case if anybody were to ask me that what all do you really miss about most bills, and like everybody else would say is to where that whenever you look at your bills a lot of times what all do you miss about it? What all do you miss about paying your bill? What all are you going to miss about doing the work, and what all are you going to miss about it? And like everybody else might even say is that really that I'm like and I know like everybody else would say is to where that you come to the point to where that whenever it comes to working hard enough, and you always want to know too is toward really do you really miss anything about taking care of and going by a routine schedule, and like everybody else might say that you don't really miss anything about it really. But let's just say that like everybody else would say is that yeah, with all do you miss anything about taking care of any source of bill really? And everybody else might say that, well, really, I don't really miss anything about it. So it's like, yeah, you want to go ahead and ask that question to where that, what all do you really miss about that bill? And what all do you miss about this process right here? And everybody else would say that, if anything, if anything, the only thing that I'm going to miss about it, if anything, would be is to where that yeah, that is to where that just to kind of get maybe a little bit of experience about how it works or whichever you call it, or like everybody else may say is to where that whenever it comes to paying off, whenever it does come to paying your loans and maybe paying for your credit cards and maybe for your mortgage payments, for sure that you go ahead and take out a loan, just to take care of something real important, right? But it's not always easy to always have to look back and whenever it goes to having to enter in for repayments, right? So that's why it sure seems that way. That when we talk about the portable pocket partner right here, so that's why it sure seems that way. That one thing that you can probably do, like everybody else would say, is that whenever you do think about the math, a lot of times, is that yeah, whenever it comes to money management, if you want to go and pick a pick a favorite number though, and let's just say that if I were to maybe pick something like 275 or something like that, for any reason at all, you want to go and just write that down right there. And people might say that, really, why would you want to go and just pick an amount and just, yeah, pick just one amount right there and $1 amount right there to memorize. And like everybody else might say is that, really, what is that going to do any good to memorize it? Just pick one number to memorize. Yeah, try to memorize that. Yeah, try to memorize. Pick a number that you can memorize. Pick an amount, a total amount to memorize, and somebody might even say that the amount to memorize. So if you were to actually to select a number, a cash dollar amount on a bill to memorize right there, like everybody else might say, the doctor could even say that if you could maybe pick a number to memorize for sure, that do you think that kind of ease off the pressure just a little bit about whenever bills are coming for due, and maybe whenever you do wind up start working on the process, and you're always worrying too, is that from all the work that you put into something, and you're 102, that really, is there really anything that you're going to miss about anything that you were doing? Even if it was third party, and even if it was, maybe having to get up and go to that meeting, go to that appointment, and maybe filling out all the paperwork and the application and everything. And that's why it sure seems that way. That really, what all are you really going to miss about it? But everybody else might even say is that really that well, I'm sure that there's something that you're gonna miss about it, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, somebody might tell you that we would never have met if you would not have taken out that loan, and maybe I would not have come across your resume. I probably would not have come across your profile. I may not have come across maybe a project that you were working on if you were not, in that office, working on what you were doing. And you talk about for mature reflection, huh? But it's like, yeah, spread the word, and talk about for spread the word, right? But a lot of times you always want to know too that whenever it does come to taking care of your bills and other expenses, though, related expenses, that you're probably thinking is toward it. Yeah, most of the time, though, that you don't really look forward to any of it, really. But let's just say that on average, that whenever it comes to taking care of bills and other expenses, though, and you'll want to know too that really what have you really learned about doing that? And like everybody else would say, is toward it. Yeah, well, I learned that this amount right here is equal to a lot more than what in this amount right here. So like let's just say that the amount of 2,458.74 right here, and so let's just say that if you were a manager working for a company and thinking is toward, okay, yeah, that whenever you first started, on your first day, your first week on the job, that you were thinking that okay, what's going to be the ups and downs of how well that you're going to be able to do, so far as how much money that you invest in, and maybe about certain times of the week that you don't really do so well, and other times that you were pretty impressed about that. And so that's why it sure seems that way almost all the time, that every time we do speak about math, though, and doing work, doing the calculations on the calculator, right? And then everybody else might say that, yeah, well, that's, for sure the worst part about taking out a loan is going to be interest. And for sure that, interest charge, that's usually the worst. That's usually the worst part about loans. And so it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about that, how that is that, whenever they add interest onto that. But, half the time you always want to know too that, really that a lot of companies that, loan providers would even say is to where that if you can go and share, your experience about what you thought about your experience about that. And I want to know too that provide feedback about that, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that payments or repayments can be canceled, and then also that there could be payment changes to the payment arrangements on. So that's why it sure seems that way, that every time you do think about loans, a lot of times that you're always worried toward the it's going to maybe take you maybe 5 years just to be able to pay back on a loan. But let's just say that on average that if you were to actually do the research, though, and want to know too that more whenever you do think about applications, a lot of times, most of the time with most applications, that you fill out an application, and if if you get approved or denied on it, but we probably think as toward it, based on your experience, though, that you're probably thinking as toward it, yeah, well, really, that so it's like based on your experience that that you see this right here, that it's on the receipt, to where that you were able to save 1,879.54 right here. And so like let's just say that from all the hard work that you put into something, and like everybody else might say that, yeah, well, I'll believe it when I see it, but anything that you might think about, but still that but I tell you one thing, everybody, that based on my experience, like everybody else would say, it's really not so bad the way you think about it. But I just really think too that that whenever it comes to taking care of our bills and other expenses, you really want to know, what has already been taken care of, and what's soon to come, to where what needs to be taken care of. And based on my experience, it sure seems that way, that it's like, yeah, whenever something that that was not resolved, and let's just say if it's been 2 years later, and it still wasn't resolved, and that can really be aggravating. So that's why it sure seems that way, that it goes by the monitoring and all that. So a lot of times it's like every time you do speak about loans and everything, and about way of how you do the paperwork and everything, and you're warned toward it. Yeah, this is how we met right here. And like anybody that anybody who's collecting retirement will probably even say that really can you explain real quick about why why the birthday and the day that you were born, especially the day that you were born, that why is it that a lot of these companies would ask you to go keep track of that just by your birthday, your date of birth, and I can maybe explain. I'm like, yeah, can you maybe explain some? I'm like, yeah, like right down here on the bottom, or I'm like, yeah, the day that you were born, yeah, right here. If you were born between these, so yeah, can you explain right here on this line right here? Why do you think that they collect that information? Well, so that way, the date of birth, the date of birth, of course, is how they go by the categorize. The cat, it all goes by the cat. I guess if you want to call it millennials or something like that. But if I'm like, yeah, that. So if you were born between these certain times of the year, and that's how they categorize. You go by the groups. I mean, yeah, that just that's just how it all works and everything, right? But a lot of times you want to know too that really what's the birthday wish right here. Like everybody else might say that, yeah, well, really that birthday wish is like to say that, yeah, well, really that. So like everybody else might say is that the thing that you put on a birthday card, especially like everybody else might say, is that we'll go ahead and make one payment for you, or if anything, that we'll go ahead and give you an extension or something like that. So a lot of times it's like that whenever it comes to, most of the time, whenever it comes to loans. So, but still, that. But I just really think that, like everybody else might say, is that in case if anybody were to ask me that, really that you would go ahead and apply for a loan for that reason, mainly because it's like, yeah, how are you supposed to, whenever somebody, whenever you do meet somebody, for sure that how are you supposed to meet anybody, or how is anybody supposed to learn from what you're working with if you don't go ahead and if you don't take out a loan or anything else that you're working with? And so like everybody else might say that, you may not owe as much money back. You may not owe as much back, as you think that you owe. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that is it real important to keep a lot of this information, safe, and I'm like, yeah, on file, and plus so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about loans, a lot of times that's just how it is that that whenever we do speak about loans, that it's like it's all about borrowing money and then working out the payment arrangements and everything. But like everybody else might say, is that yeah, this is how we met. This is how we met. Is to where the thanks for explaining. A lot more expensive, but then a lot more to explore and all that. But it sure seems that way that everybody else might even say is that based on your experience and based on my experience, that for the most part, that whenever you do take out a loan, it sure seems that way, that it's all about putting more bills on the table, right? How often is it really going to be about, is this toward, okay, yeah, we'll send you a gift, just for saying thanks for your time or something like that? Or how often is it really going to be about the fact that, this is how, yeah, we want to show you how this works or something like that? So, you might even, you might check something. I'm like, yeah, you may check it out and say is to where you go ahead and try to get approved a loan, a personal loan, just because that just to check it out, or just to see that if you, I'm like, yeah, but like everybody else might say that whenever it comes to spending money, a lot of times, like everybody else say that yeah, that you want to go ahead and include a symbol right there. That symbol right there is going to include like yeah. So it's like a happy face or something like that, but rolling the dice or something like that, but yeah, cash. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, you when every time you do speak about loans, a lot of times that the first thing that comes to your mind is money, but at the time you want to know too that really show me what you're talking about. And at the time people might even say is that yeah, can you please show me what you're talking about whenever you say something like, okay, go ahead now. I'm like, yeah, like, but still, the idea that I was thinking about was really that 45, 450 each, right here on top. I'm like, yeah, for the 300 or something like that. So really, that looking at these all these digits right here, like everybody else might say that 0, 0 right there. So it's like, yeah, that so every time we do think about the math right there, and you're always want to know too that there for a while that's how much it was. Yeah, rendering right there was $0.00 right there, and then after about maybe after 6 months that whenever you were working on your payments, and then this is how much it was showing right here. So it's like every time we think about bills, a lot of times, and you're always want to know too that you're it's like say that yeah, well you know how that is that whenever it comes to taking care of your bills and everything, that taking care of your loan repayments and everything, that you're always thinking as to where that yeah, well really that if you had that choice to where I'm like yeah, if you had that ability to where you can go and just say that you'll go ahead and just make an additional payment or pay this yeah, I'll pay this yeah, pay this next week or something like that. But so a lot of times it seems like that yeah, how often are we gonna maybe thinking as to where that yeah, do you take out a loan just because of the fact that yeah, this is how you meet somebody, this is how you meet people, is that whenever you take out a loan, but still. But on the other hand, it sure seems that way. That based on your experience, though, that loans are all about, it's a big job. It's all about keeping you busy, right? But at the same time, you just may learn something. Just be surprised of what you find. Anyway, but I say just be surprised at what you learned, huh? But anyway, the gift of kindness, gift of appreciation, right? But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.